We've been lied to.
What?
We've been lied to as a people. We've been lied to as a society. We've been lied to as a community. If you're wondering who I am, my name is Ebuka, a plant icon and a plant industry whistleblower based here in Lagos, Nigeria. And if there's one thing we do vehemently on this page, is we expose lies. Whenever you see the boy and whenever you see his blue book, just know that we are about to expose a can of lies in this plant community. Today, we're going to be talking about so-called easy plants. Plants that have been branded as easy. Look up easy plants at any website. Google search them and these plants will always make the list. But I'm here to tell you that some of these plants are not as easy as they claim to be. In fact, the problem is not you, it is these plants. Okay, we're going to expose these plants for what they really are, and I'm going to tell you why, indeed, they're not as easy as they claim to be. Sit down, grab a cup of coffee, clutch your pearls, grab someone, and let's get to the nitty-gritty. Now, the first plant on this list may shock you all to your bone marrows, and I want you to prepare yourself for it. I want you to gather yourself, okay? The truth is not always easy and can be a bitter pill, but it will set you free. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? The first plant is a ZZ plant. A ZZ plant, the iconic ZZ plant, the poster child of all easy plants. Zamilokukos, whatever her name is, check every easy beginner-friendly list, and she's certainly going to make an appearance. Well, ladies and gentlemen, hang on before you type that comment disagreeing. ZZ plants are not for everyone. If you're the type of person that stays at home and has absolutely no social life, I may be describing myself, and all you do is care about plants, this plant is not for you. You're gonna kill this plant in a heartbeat. I should know because I've killed this plant on several occasions. If there's one plant that I've killed the most, more than any other plant, it is a ZZ plant. You know why? Because this plant doesn't want to be taken care of. This plant is not for the girlies that have no social lives. This plant is not for the introverts. This plant is not for those that like to care for plants. No, it doesn't like to be taken care of. This is the one plant I can categorically say I detest that term. Thrives off neglect. But this is the one plant I can categorically say thrives off neglect. It doesn't want you to take care of it. This plant is for the bodies that are always flying, that are always jet setting from one country to the other. The girlies out in the club who do not have time to take care of plants. The people who have busy lives and plenty friends. Not you and I that barely have a social life, and all we do is sit down and talk about plants. Not us. The moment you start to care for this plant and you start to water it frequently, it is going to rot fast. Which is how I ended up killing several of this plant. It's only this year that I finally got the hang. And I'm still, just approaching her with fear and anxiety. I finally got the hang of this plant and I've been able to keep it alive for more than 3 months, a personal Guinness World Record. And I did so by switching her to a terracotta pot and sporadically watering her, very sporadically. This is why I'm saying that these plants, I'm not necessarily saying that they are difficult plants by any means, but just because they are easy doesn't necessarily mean they will tolerate your nonsense. And Miss Zizi doesn't like it when you care for her too much or when you water her a bit too heavy-handedly. Now, interestingly, on the flip side, you don't want to go too extreme as well. Because people hear that term thrives off neglect and they feel, okay, I can go 6 years without watering my plant. You can lose this plant to underwatering. That's happened to me before. I was literally too afraid to water her that, she passed away as a result. So will I say that this is an easy plant? Yes And no. Will I recommend this plant to beginners? It depends. These are the terminologies we should be using. It depends. It is not categorically an easy plant. If you're a beginner that has a social life, you're traveling all the time, you're a body on the move, yeah, I'm gonna recommend her to you. If you're the beginner that loves to water plants constantly, you're obsessed with watering plants, and you have no social life whatsoever, and you work from home, I'm not gonna recommend this plant to you. No. But I'm curious to know your thoughts. Do you guys agree? And have you also been scarred by this plant? I can't be the only one that has killed this easy plant 900 times. Please do let me know in the comments. Alright, now this next one, I've actually made an entire video exposing this plant for what it really is, because it's a very popular and iconic plant. It makes the list on every easy plant listing. And I just want to say at this venture that just because a plant is easy, this used to be a mantra, back in the day in 2024, in the early days of this channel. And I want to repeat it, I want to bring it back. Just because a plant is easy doesn't mean it's beginner friendly. I'm also going to add here, just because a plant is easy doesn't mean it is low maintenance. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the Monstera deliciosa. The Monstera deliciosa. She's an easy plant, but she's certainly not beginner friendly, and she's certainly not low maintenance. I have a whole video detailing why you may want to avoid this plant, and I'm going to just reiterate certain things here. One thing lots of people don't know about the Monstera deliciosa is that she's a trip magnet. Trips have such an attachment to this plant, and you're certainly going to have your fair share of trip infestations with this plant, which can quickly decimate your collection if you're a novice and or a beginner. Also, when it comes to the growth profile of this plant, the way it is sold to you guys, especially my Western girlies, in this part of the world we don't do that, but my Western girlies, the way it is sold to you guys, it usually comprises of multiple vines in a pot, which can make things very complicated as it grows, because for the most part this is a climbing plant and each vine will need its support. Also, this is an extremely leggy and phototrophic plant. It will always stretch towards the light source. Always and always, where the light source is will definitely determine or ruin its growth profile, whether it is natural or artificial light with a grow light. So girlies, look, that video spills the entire tea, but your Monstera deliciosa, I am going to categorically tell you that this is not a beginner friendly easy plant. You need to be a bit more. You need to be a bit more on the experience side to grow a beautiful specimen of this plant. If not, your Monstera deliciosa is going to look like a hot mess. Do you get what I mean? Do you agree? Please do let me know in the comments section. And if you're feeling the content, you're liking the vibe here, you're liking this energy, subscribe and check out my YouTube membership for more behind the scenes exclusive exposés. Thank you. Now this next plant, girlies, this was actually the plant that inspired this entire video. This plant inspired this entire video. In my previous video, I actually talked about this plant, and a lot of you in the comments were sharing your horror stories of this plant. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the infamous, the notorious spider plant. Spider plants are not easy plants. Let's be real with ourselves. They are not easy plants, and like I shared in my previous video, there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of clashing information out there about how to take care of this plant. I'm not going to stay here and say I'm an expert and tell you what to do. Girlies, I've been scarred on several occasions by this plant, so I don't even know how to categorically take care of this one. All I know is that it is notorious for those crusty browning tips, and notorious for honestly just looking like a hot mess. Oh Jesus, living in an overpopulated country. One thing I got out from the comments in that previous video was that a lot of you had great success growing this plant outdoors. My Australian, my South African girlies, that live in a more mild climate where you can grow these plants outdoors. A lot of you actually attested to growing yours outdoors and they actually grow like weeds. I'm beginning to think that maybe this plant needs a lot more light than a lot of people realize. From the little I can defer about growing this plant, it needs to be constantly moist and it needs a lot of light. I'm curious to know your thoughts in the comment section, but I'm sure we can collectively agree on this one that this is not an easy plant and we need to stop categorizing it as an easy plant. Thank you. This next one is not just a plant, but a whole genus. That whole genus is not easy. It is not easy. Ladies and gentlemen, Hoyas. Hang on. I'm not necessarily saying that. In fact, I'm not even saying that any of the plants I'm mentioning on this list are difficult plants, but I'm saying that they're just not as easy, and it's important to listen to conversations like this so you know how to better approach them. Do you get what I mean? Hoyas are not easy and they are not beginner friendly. Okay, I've had my fair share of Hoyas. There was a time I was obsessed with collecting them and they've pretty much all died. I literally just have only one left and standing. First things first, in as much as I slander a chunky potting soil, you guys have seen me slander the chunky aerial potting mix. Babes, I feel like when it comes to Hoyas, because of how small and delicate their root system can be, you better make that soil airy. You better make the soil you used to plant them airy, and I dare say it, chunky. If not, these guys will quickly decline. That was what happened to me. I was using my standard, very soil-based mixed that I use for all my plants, but these guys, and they weren't feeling it. Also, what a lot of people do not realize is that Hoyas have a symbiotic relationship with mealybugs. Yes, it is a symbiotic relationship. That is how it exists in the wild. That is how God engineered them. And I learned this from watching an episode of Only Plants videos. You know, I always give credit where credit is due. He was interviewing a Hoya grower and he noted that Hoyas actually produce nectar that attracts mealybugs. These mealybugs in turn produce or secrete nectar that attracts ants. And then these ants then fertilize the flowers of the Hoyas. These ants are the natural pollinators of these Hoyas. I'm saying all of this because if you are not equipped with dealing with mealybugs, if you're that novice beginner collector, then you can be very quickly overwhelmed by your Hoya collection, which was what pretty much happened to me. I was collecting all these Hoyas, and now that I think about it, during the peak of my Hoya collection, I was always battling mealybug infestations. Always, because the Hoyas were attracting the mealybugs. Okay, so you see how that can be challenging for you as a beginner, as somebody who wants an easy plant. And this is why, sorry to go off on a tangent here, but this is why I'm really against like collecting. I feel like if you have one or two Hoyas, that's fine. But if you have like a whole squad, that is where the mealybug battle begins, basically. Just because you like a genus, we've talked about this before, just because you like a genus of plants doesn't mean you have to collect every single plant in that genus. Okay. Also, this has turned into a Hoya slander video. But I went through a lot with them. I'll tell you that. Also, when it comes to Hoyas, there are those that prefer to grow trailing downwards, like your Hoya compacta. They don't mind trailing downwards and all of that. Whereas there are those that will not grow except they vine upwards on something. So you need to be able to differentiate the two, and you need to be able to provide the vining ones with a trellis where they can vine upwards. You see, this is not a beginner-friendly genus. Oh, Jesus. Like I said, just because a plant is easy doesn't necessarily mean it's beginner friendly. Just because a plant is easy doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take trash from you. You're still going to have to do the work, and you're still going to have to set it up for success. Okay, so this last one, I thought I was the only one that was a victim of the ways of this plant until I saw my homegirl, Monef's Jungle. Check her out. I love her YouTube. It's very calming and very centering. I saw her on Instagram talk about what she went through with this plant, and I was like, oh Lord, I'm not the only one. I thank God I wasn't the only one that went through what I went through with this plant. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the Anthurium crystallinum. Everywhere you go around the world, they will tell you this is a beginner-friendly Anthurium. It's a great entryway Anthurium. Get it! Oh, get. This plant showed me pepper. I've had my fair share of Anthuriums. I'm not like a big Anthurium collector, but I have my fair share of them, and they've been fine. But this one showed me serious pepper. The problem I have with this plant, it is so hard to keep it fresh. It is so hard to keep the leaves looking fresh and as beautiful and as iconic as this. Once you leave this plant to dry out, even if it's by 2 inches and by a day longer than usual, those crispy edges, those crispy damaged leaves will surface. Also, for me, I live in an oven. This country is an oven. The other day, it was 28 degrees Celsius here, and I was feeling cold at 28 degrees Celsius. I was telling you all on my Instagram. By the way, if you're not following my Instagram, you're missing out on a lot of my shenanigans. Do check it out. I was telling people on my Instagram that, oh my God, it's cold. It's cold, it's winter, because I live in an oven. This plant doesn't like the heat or high temperatures, so it was really hard for me to keep the leaves like fresh, because the moment it got hot, I'm talking temperatures over 34 degrees Celsius, nearing towards the late 30s, which is the usual temperatures we get here anyway during the dry season. Babe wasn't having it. She was looking like a hot mess. And I've tried her on several occasions. There's one I saw recently that I'm actually tempted to buy again, and I'm like, maybe I'm gonna grow it indoors this time around, outdoors during the rainy season, and then move it indoors during the dry season. I don't know, should I go for it? Let me know in the comment section if I should try it again now that I have a better indoor setup. But based off of what I went through, this has been the most difficult Anthurium, and I won't classify it as an easy plant. Whew, okay, that was quite a chatty one, but I'm actually curious to know your thoughts. And I feel like the whole essence of this video is that, in as much as some of these plants I have mentioned on this list are actually easy to a certain extent, like I said, you do have to put in the work, and you do need to set them up for success, okay? And you also need to evaluate what type of person you are. Like we talked about in the ZZ case, are you the type of person that has a social life, is always out and about? Then a ZZ plant may work for you. And on the flip side, if you're not, a plant like a ZZ will not work for you. So there are certain nuances that need to be considered even when approaching these so-called easy plants, and that is the entire crux of this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it informative. As usual, I'm curious to know your thoughts below. Let me know in the comment section. Until then, I'ma see you in the next one. Bye, my loves.